Board Member Orgel. Board Member Woods. Board Member Love. Board Member McCormick. Board Member Jones. Board Member Bibbs. Board Member Cornell. Board Chair Avant.
Here.
You have 7 present.
We have a quorum. We're going to now move to the Pledge of Allegiance, and the color guard is present to post those colors. Tonight we have present Cadet Colonel Desiree Reed, Cadet Major Please remain standing for a moment of silence. You may be seated. In keeping with SCS's acknowledgement of arts education as being vital to college, career, and life readiness, tonight's Spotlight on the Arts will feature 2 groups of students. The first group of students is from Colonial Middle School under the direction of teachers Jennifer Shubaru and Robin Webb. Students created artwork about social injustices in our country. Their work was featured during South Main Trolley Art Night and in the Commercial Appeal on February 11. Please congratulate these students and teachers in their work to express understanding of current social issues throughout meaningful works of art. Oh, let's just have them come back. Okay, we're gonna actually flip the order. We're gonna actually have Watoto. A spotlight on the arts includes from Riverview K-8 in partnership with the Watoto Memphis Performing Arts Academy under the direction of Donna O'Connor. Latasha Harris is the principal of Riverview K-8. Thank you to the students who will be performing tonight. Okay. Thank you, Watoto. Thank you, Watoto, and to the students of Riverview K-8. I know Mr. Connor does an excellent job of providing this type of performance within our schools, and so we thank them for coming to share a little bit about what they are learning and doing. Superintendent, we now have Spotlight on the Arts with Colonial Middle School.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So our leadership team, Madam Chair, has been doing some work around race and equity. And as part of that work, we were blessed with some very moving student work that focused on a lot of issues here in Memphis. And I thought it was particularly relevant and powerful as we move towards Dr. King's 50-year anniversary. And so I want to ask those students to come forward along with their teacher, Ms. Shibaru, I'm sorry, and share that artwork with you all.
Good evening.
My name is Finnegan Orr. My artwork is about the segregation of schools today. Despite the integration of school following the Brown versus the Board of Education, schools are schools are back to being as segregated as they were before. 80 of Latino students and 74 of African American students attend school with mostly non-white students. Segregation in schools is also along economic lines. I show the difference in schools cafeterias between the mostly white, wealthy private school and the mostly minority cash-strapped public schools.
My name is Faith Halbersmith. It's about the use of standardized testing to label students to prevent them from opportunity. Dr. Umar Johnson came up with the theory that test scores on the new Jim Crow system used to keep black people and poor people from opportunity. Dr. Johnson points out, for example, that whites and blacks score equally on the intelligence measures of IQ tests except for verbal reasoning and vocabulary. Verbal reasoning, Dr. Johnson argues, involves prior knowledge and does not measure true intelligence. Students who grow up in a home where standard English is spoken, have books at home, and take trips to museums have an advantage over those who do not. The test, therefore, not measuring ability. Schools and colleges set minimum score requirements that prevent many poor and minority students from have difficulty attaining.
I will be reading in the place of Lydia Jackson. Test scores, attendance, conduct, and dropout rate have an influence on the likelihood that an individual will go to jail. The greatest impact is on African American and Latino boys. Over half of African American males drop out or are expelled from high school. Of those, 60% will wind up in jail. 70% of all in-school arrests are black or Latino students. Zero tolerance school discipline policies and policies with a high emphasis on test scores, such as No Child Left Behind, increase the dropout rate, which feeds the prison population. I drew a young African American boy in an oversized prison uniform. Depending on his child's scores and disciplinary record, he has already been predicted to go to jail after a possible dropout. Measures need to be put in place in our community to prevent the likelihood of children growing up to be prisoners.
I'm going to read this in place of Isaac Payne, who was supposed to be here this evening. For African American males born in 2001 or later, 1 out of 3 can expect to go to prison in their lifetime if things do not change. 87% of the prison population in Memphis is African American. This statistic means that some of my friends will wind up in prison sometime in their life, and I don't want that to happen. What is our society doing to fix this?
My name is Charles Jones, and my piece is on money in prison. 1 day in prison costs more than 10 days on parole or 22 days on probation. 1 in every 100 adults is in prison. 80% of prisoners work in prison to help with the cost of feeding them and housing them. Lots of money is spent, and lots of money is profited on keeping people in prison. In the past 23 years, California has built 23 prisons, but only 1 public college. It cost California $100 million to build a new prison. Over the last 20 years, national spending on prisons has increased 6 times greater than spending on higher education.
Hi, my name is Bianca Massey.
Speak up a
said-
little, sweetheart.
I said, hi, my name is Bianca Massey. Okay, so, my piece is on hope for black-owned businesses. And, so Memphis population is majority African American, but black-owned businesses make up less than 1% of the business revenue in the whole city. This makes me feel upset for our community. I drew a map of mostly black neighborhoods in Memphis, such as South Memphis and North Memphis. Unfortunately, in these areas, you don't see the thriving businesses that you see in my picture. There are mostly broken down houses and buildings with boards over the windows. Even the people are doing different things. You don't see people walking their dogs or riding their bikes in these parts of towns. I wanted to show the upside of what these places in our city would look like if we let go of stereotypes and racism and invest in all of the neighborhoods.
I'll be reading the piece from Madeline Ellis. My piece is based on the ways companies make money off of immigrants in the United States. Immigrants do many hands-on jobs such as painting houses, construction, and cleaning, but get paid very little for their work. Private corporations and legislative groups such as ALEC, CCA, and GEO make money by incarcerating undocumented immigrants in detention centers. Each night that someone stays in these private facilities, a profit is made. These organizations make up $166 per person each night. These organizations spend millions lobbying for private prisons, but wind up profiting in the buildings.
Thank you. So this is a tradition of projects that I do with my students each year about social injustice. So last year's unit was about institutional racism. So the students studied a wide variety of topics and then chose their particular topics of interest and created these artworks and student statements with them. Thank you.
Mr. Earl of Ishuru, we want to thank you for coming out to share. It is really a reflection that many of the topics that your students have chosen to share as works of art to depict what happens in this community are topics that obviously this board deals with each and every day. So we appreciate your students bringing back a reflection of things that give us some moral compass about the work that we're doing here at SCS. Thank you. Mr. Caldwell.
So I would hope board members recognize Ms. Shibaru and how many times she comes up here. So I just wanted to acknowledge her for the great work that she's doing. She's a former Memphis City School optional student, and the lady that taught her is still working for us. So just think it's a wonderful thing. We lose sight of all the great things that Memphis City Schools accomplished, and this in particular, I think, is something that's very moving. And I think it's sometimes just the honesty that you see from the students and the way they frame the issues is very powerful. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell?
Madam Chair, it's very interesting. Can I say something about testing?
Sure.
Because the students.
What
What's
are the
interesting
students?
to me is that, and I did not know they were going to be here, but I'm reading a book called Weapons of Math Destruction by a PhD from Harvard. And in it's a line that backs up what the student said. It said, attempting to score a teacher's effectiveness by analyzing the test results of only 25 or 30 students is statistically unsound, even laughable. The numbers are far too small given all the things that could go wrong. So I think when the students talk about testing as can possibly being harmful to education progress, we have PhDs in data science from Harvard writing books that agree.
We appreciate all of the hard work that our students, and I'm hopeful that Ms. Powers, maybe those works of art could be shared on our website for all to see. It's a powerful way for us to be able to talk about what our kids are learning and teaching back to us as adults. Next on the agenda, we have another special recognition. Shelby County Schools announces Teachers of the Year Emily Tabakin, a teacher at Kingsbury Elementary School, who was named Teacher of the Year for SCS Elementary School. She is also Ms. T and has demonstrated a positive example for her students by creating a space for students to enjoy learning as much as she loves teaching. The principal at Kingsbury is Mr. Wynn Earl. We also have Tanyola Matthews. She's a high school teacher of the year. Ms. Mathis works to help SCS students with special needs transition into the workforce through a program which she has helped create with the University of Memphis. We are so proud of our SCS teachers. Thank you for all you do. And lastly, we'd like to recognize Westwood High School PTSA. I'm sorry, is Ms. Tabakin and Ms. Mathis here tonight? Oh, if you could come forward, and we're going to do a presentation picture with the board. Let's give them a round of applause.
Camera. Don't quote me on that. Don't leave. Don't leave.
We'd now like to have come forward the Westwood High School PTSA, and I have a special resolution that I'd like to read recognizing them. So if the members of the Westwood PTSA could come forward, please. I just want to acknowledge that Westwood has suffered a tremendous loss in Coach Harris, and I appreciate them coming today in spite of. But I'd like to read into this resolution into the record. Whereas Westwood High School Parent-Teacher Student Association is comprised of devoted Memphians who have profoundly impacted the lives of students, educators, and the community. And whereas Westwood High School PTSA has received national recognition for the National Parent Teacher Association, and whereas Westwood High School PTSA is a strong advocate for children's education, family engagement, and community involvement, and whereas PTSA is a resource for students and families, and whereas members of the Westwood High School PTSA are members of a prominent education and community service organizations throughout the United States, and whereas Westwood High School PTSA has fostered a positive rapport with educators and administrators throughout the Shelby County School District, and whereas members of Westwood High School PTSA have received a grant from the National PTA to promote family engagement during the Take Your Family to School Week, and whereas Westwood High School PTSA shows true commitment to Westwood High School, Shelby County Schools, and the City of Memphis, Tennessee, now therefore it be resolved that the Shelby County Board of Education recognizes the Westwood High School PTSA for its community involvement, education advocacy, and family engagement throughout Shelby County, and congratulates the Westwood High School PTSA on its receipt of a grant that awards the from the National Parent Teacher Association, submitted on the 27th day of February 2018 by Shantae Avant, Stephanie Love, Chris Caldwell, Teresa Jones, Kevin Wood, Scott McCormick, Miska Clay Bibbs, Billy Orgel, and Mike Kernell. Please come forward. Come on. Yes. I just want to thank the Westwood PTSA. This is obviously, they were recognized for a national grant because of their work within Westwood, so we want to continue to support our schools who are doing great work, but I would be remiss if we didn't just say, take a moment of silence for Coach Harris, who was not mentioned earlier, but it was a tremendous loss to the Westwood community, so we could just take a moment of silence. Thank you. Mr. Woods?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to acknowledge Coach Harris as well, and I'm glad you brought that to the attention of the body. Many people may not know, but Coach Harris actually coached in Bolivar, Tennessee, middle school prior to coming to Memphis. He was actually my football coach, and which may not be mentioned at the service, but probably one of the best advice that he ever gave was stick to the books, Kevin, and and leave sports to the real athlete. So he will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we are on the question of the vote. Public comment. Okay. Now we're moving to the approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, there are a few items to be added to the agenda. One would be the resolution to support mock trials by supported by Shantae Avant, and then a resolution. No, write this one. A resolution supporting participation in the Students at the Center Challenge, a joint initiative of the Coalition for Community Schools, Communities in Schools, and Strive Together, submitted by Miska Clay-Bibbs. And then there's also one other agenda item, which is the dual services for Voice, WAN, and IA. If there are no objections, then these items will be added to the agenda. Seeing no objections, now we're to the question of the. Do I need to? Okay, so we get a roll call vote.
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orgel.
I don't have it.
Board Member Woods. Board Member Love.
Board Member Love.
Board Member McCormick.
Aye.
Board Member Jones.
Aye.
Board Member Bibbs. Aye. Board Member Cornell.
Aye.
Board Chair Avant.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
We have a quorum. The agenda is approved. Now it's on the question of approval of the minutes. This is the approval of the January 30th, 2018 board business meeting minutes and approval of the February 20th, 2018 work session meeting. It is Is that right? We are. Are there any corrections or amendments to the minutes? Not, we'll have a roll call vote.
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orgel. Board Member Woods. Board Member Love. Board Member McCormick. Board Member Jones. Board Member Bibbs.
Aye.
Board Member Cornell.
Aye.
Board Chair Avant. You have 9 ayes.
The minutes are approved. Now we'll move to the public comment section. Tennessee law makes no specific provisions for the participation of the public at meetings of local boards of education. However, board policy provides that not more than 30 minutes of each regular business and special call meeting shall be devoted to public comment. Speakers must state their name, home, address, organization he or she is representing, if any, and subject of the presentation before they are permitted to proceed. Speakers may offer objective comments about school operations and programs that concern them. To refrain from using names of personnel or names of persons connected with the school system, particularly when lodging a complaint. Speakers will not be permitted to engage in gossip, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. The chairman shall have the authority to terminate the remarks of any individual who is disruptive or does not adhere to board rules. The timer projected on the screen to your right and directly behind the board will turn yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining. When you hear 2 bells, your time has expired. First, we'll have Claudette Boyd. Second will be Keith Williams and Jesse Jeff. Maybe we should number it.
At my time. Okay. As an advocate for Melrose High School, I'm here to regard an issue with zoning. I have sent letters to you board members regarding zoning at Melrose High School, including all the Orange Mound and the feeder location of Sherwood community as of yet. After letters requesting to participate and asking procedures to how to get our zoning, attendance zoning corrected, I have received no valid answer from anyone here, including Michelle Stewart, the Chief of Staff, our representatives. No one here has given us a valid answer as to why the zoning was changed. Many suggested due to pure political reasons for one individual former board members. However, no one is willing to address and correct this issue. We currently have a large majority of our Orange Mound residents being bused to other schools. We have students assigned to White Station who live 1 block away from the school. You can see the school within walking distance. I am now requesting to meet with anyone that y'all deem necessary to change the current school attendance zoning, to be at the table when these attendance zoning lines are drawn for 2018 and 2019. We'll just simply ask to be treated fairly. Melrose now has a capacity where we have under 560 students. White Station has over 2,200 kids. So it seems like it's just impossible for us to get this attendance zoning issue down pat. So I'm asking for your help. Please help us so we can be at the table and not on the table. Thank you.
Keith Williams, the Memphis-Shelby County Education Association, is Executive Director, 126 Flicker. I do not purchase anything other than life insurance that I will not realize until I die. It is impossible and preposterous to me that this Board of Education has engaged in curriculum contract that promises by its very nature you will not realize any growth for 4 or 5 years. There's a learning. There's no such thing. Nothing replaces good teaching and learning. I don't care what you buy. Now, if you're going to buy something and the promise is already there, you're going to fail for the first 3 years. That makes absolutely no sense. It makes no sense. And I'm going to share with you, and I have a copy for each of you to have the state standards in writing. This EL curriculum does not address a standard on the writing curriculum in the state. You are setting these children up for failure. You are setting the teachers up for failure, and they will fail if they follow this EL curriculum. It does not address a standard. There are more than 57 writing standards for the state of Tennessee. None of them are addressed in the EL curriculum. It is a canned curriculum. It is scripted. You are told what to say, when to say, and how to say. Teachers do not teach that way. Children do not learn that way. None of you learn that way. The question was asked at the last meeting. I learned to read Spot, Dick, and Jane, but you learned by sight, by phonetics, and by rote. And there were words that you learned to put into sentences. There is a method to teaching, reading, and writing, and this curriculum does not follow it. And if we go down this road, we are wasting citizens and the money of this community. Thank you.
My name is Jesse K. Jeff. I reside at 1212 Stage Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee. I'm a Unicertified for MSCEA. Superintendent, school board members, I stand before you today to address the climate and culture here at SCS. 8 aspects of a positive school climate and culture are positive teacher-student interactions, students who feel safe, connected, and engaged, policy promoting social, emotional, ethical, civic, and intellectual skills, clear, appropriate, and consistent expectations and consequences to address disrupted student behavior. Parental involvement, collaborative relationships between the school leader and the faculty as well as between faculty members. Focus on learning and high expectation for student achievement, decrease teacher turnover, and increase teacher satisfaction. The students can see this. So for me, the two most important are collaborative relationships between the school leader and faculty as well. According to SCS Policy 4050, Effective School Leadership, the district believes that school leaders should possess strong professionalism, maintain confidentiality, integrity, fairness, and consistency. That's not happening at all locations. Also, policy 40002 talks about staff ethics. The policy applies to all individuals employed by SCS. Contrary to some principals' popular belief, it applies to them also. A possible solution would be to create an instrument or app that would replace the antiquated Insight survey. This Insight survey is not secret, and that precludes the district from receiving the truth about the instructional leaders.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Jeff. I'm going to call the next three names: Brian Biggert, Derry Phillips, and Annette Harris.
I'm Brian Bigard, 3379 Coleman Road. I represent MSCEA Board of Directors. Good evening to the superintendent, members of the board. In the wake of the 2017-18 grading issue cloud that clouds our district, I would like to share with you my concerns about Power School and Power Teacher Pro. My first concern is that the constant dropping of students that are actively sitting in class have been dropped several times for reasons unknown to teachers. When these students are wiped off the roll, we lose assignments, grades, which include tests and classwork, absences and tardies, anecdotal notes of importance such as parent contacts and parent information. Secondly, teachers become blind without knowledge of a student when he or she transfers from a different school. We don't have access to prior grades, attendance, parent contact information, classroom teacher of record at a huge disadvantage. My solution is to demand training, not by the Shelby County school personnel, but by the personnel of the Power School and Power Teacher Pro administrators during in-service week. That will allow the teachers also, my suggestion is that you will allow the teachers access to the historical grades of the child, which are presently done by the principal and their designee. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Derry Phillips. I represent MSCA 126 Flicker Street and the 4% of African American males who represent in this country. Strength is ordained out of the mouths of babes, and these children just gave us some real live statistics in regards to the school to prison pipeline. The education climate scorecard that was posted on the website is a slap in the face for us who work with children every day, and to know that it's made up of attendance, suspension rates, and expulsion rates. If we know that this data is there, how come we can't be more proactive than reactive and close our schools because of the climate? If we know that the suspension rate is at that rate and there is a problem, and we have a state that's going to have an accountability model that's going to translate those numbers to that and close our schools, I just believe that we in Shelby County schools can do something about it, and that is address our students, support them better, but not close our schools and communities, because New Orleans has 5 public schools right now, and it has destroyed their community. Philadelphia has, I don't know how many public schools right now, but it has destroyed their community. These statistics and these numbers are useful. I just think we're using them in a different way that is not proactive.
Good evening. My name is Annette Harris, 4100 Mill Branch Avenue, Memphis-Shelby County Education Association. I stand before you trying to get ending of the district's purpose of fresh starting schools. When I look at the schools that have been fresh started, I think of a deck of cards that's being shuffled, meaning that teachers and staff are moved from school to school by way of reapplying for jobs. Many of the schools that have been fresh started are still understaffed, and with the numbers of retiring teachers, many more will be. Well, is it safe to say it's better to have a sub than a qualified teacher? At Robert R. Church Elementary, we just filled a fourth grade position and school is almost over. But we're thinking about the children, right? Right. Speaking of Robert R. Church, the empowerment zone, and the 3 phases of intervention, we've only fully completed phase 1, but we're about to be fresh started due to the crunching called data. What about the promise to complete the plan of action with the existing staff that are stakeholders in our school and community? Many of our teachers have a vested interest in our school because they are a product of the community. Many of them live in the neighborhood, and their children even attend Whitehaven schools. Instead, you want to bring in a new group of teachers implementing the same interventions that we were promised. Have you ever heard of a promise made is a promise kept? Somewhere I read if we do not stop to help our children, what will happen to them? We as teachers want to address the pedagogy of education. Therefore, I say to the board, will the ills that truly impact students' learning ever be addressed? Thank you.
Next, I'm going to call the next 3 names: Andrea Brown, Miss Madison, and Elena Terry. Andrea Brown, Miss Madison, and Elena Terry.
Hello, my name is Alana Terry, and I stay at 2845 South Dunmore Street, and the topic is security and school officers. I am a student attending Melrose High School, and
Speak up a little, sweetheart.
I am a student that attends Melrose High School and is ranked and graduated in the top 20. And I got expelled for an officer's ignorance and excessive force. I am very disappointed at my principal and majority of the staff at Melrose High School when the goal at every school is to make sure that students succeed. Now I am fearful of returning to school because of the excessive and unnecessary force the officers used on me, my mother, and my sister. I have goals and dreams, and it is hard to stay focused being in fear to go to school because of the officers. Officers are meant to keep school safe and comfortable to attend and not make school a place to fear.
Hello, my name is Anne Marie Madison. I am at 2930 Sam Cooper Boulevard. I teach 3rd grade at William Herbert Brewster. However, I'm here representing myself as an advocate for EL. Once I started doing the EL, or I should start with this, before we were doing the EL, my students were simply asked to regurgitate information from unconnected texts. They were not interested in them, they could not connect to them, and they simply did not retain the information that they were getting out of the books. Since doing the EL curriculum, my students have been able to relation. They're able to make connections with the books and the characters. The books themselves are beautiful, inspiring.
I'm going to ask the audience to give every speaker the same respect. Regardless if you agree with them or not, I'm going to ask for you to give them the same respect given to you. You may continue.
Thank you. The texts are relevant, beautiful, and inspiring to the students. I have students that are able to tell me and use the information that they've gotten from the books weeks and months later. They use it when they're taking their test. They use it when they're just in the hallway to remind each other, oh, don't forget, don't be like Selig and devour your books. And I hear it all throughout the hallways with the students. My personal opinion, I hear a lot of talking about how it doesn't address the standards directly, and that's true, but you can actually pull them out of the text if you do a little bit of front loading and front work. The other thing that I think that is so great about EL than the other books is that it is literally teaching the kids how to critically think. So if the kids are able to do the EL curriculum, they will be able to do well on the tests, because we want our students to be able to critically think and not simply regurgitate facts. Thank you very much.
Elena Terry.
My name is Samara Terry.
stay at 2845 South Dunmore Street, and the topic is school officers and security. And I'm a sophomore at Melrose High School. I was a victim assaulted by an officer. I was expelled due to the ignorance and over aggressive behavior towards me. I feel like this is not fair that I have to go to school in fear of being assaulted. I never attended a school with a non-concerned principal. I have witnessed a student that wanted to kill themselves because of the aggressiveness in the officers. This officer is rude and disrespectful and dangerous to be in the school around children with that much aggression. All I'm asking is for a change.
We next have, I'm going to call the next three speakers, Tiffany Atkins, Sharonda Beard, and Wayne Ingram.
Good evening. My name is Tiffany Atkins. 2845 South Dunmore is my address. I'm here due to the excessive behavior in the officers at the schools. I was a victim of being assaulted, me and my daughters, by officers in the school. Just very disrespectful and rude. No communication there at all. And I hear my kids come home stating all the time about the aggressive officers, all the time students wanting to hurt themselves. It's just too much. All they want to do is go to school and learn. That's it. I know that they're there for the safety, and the officers are enforcers, but they don't have to be so aggressive towards the children. Like I said, being a victim in this myself, it was very, very heartbreaking. So I really am asking you guys to really investigate these officers in these schools with these babies, because the aggression is not necessary. They're putting more fear in them than keeping them safe. Thank you.
Good evening. How are you all? I'm sorry, Sharonda Beard, Principal, Balmore Ridgeway, 905 Grosvenor Avenue, speaking as principal and advocate of EL. I had the opportunity to travel to Atlanta, Georgia, with some of the cabinet members of this district. And this was spearheaded by Dr. Bird and Dr. Whitelaw. And when we got there, we thought our trip was going to be dizzy because of the snow. But although we experienced that snow during our time, we thought, okay, this is not going to be worth our time. It turned out to be just what we needed. Sit, time to reflect, time to brainstorm. We had an opportunity to speak with Dr. Diamond Jack, principal at Hollis Innovation Academy, and her administrative team, and wonderful, wonderful reps from the EL team. They shared their pitfalls, their major successes, and their strategies within EL, many of which we felt as principals we are currently implementing here at our schools, and teachers are well aware of these strategies. As the president of the Principals Association within this district, I have received, like the Shelby County Schools MEA, numerous concerns about EL. From the implementation time frame, starting in November, the lack of resources, or the inability to see the rigor in the lessons or how the content will lead to an understanding of the standards. I've heard it all. But the problem does not lie in the curriculum. It is how it was rolled out to the principal.
Thank you, Ms. Beard.
And how and I didn't get just
Thank you, Ms.
finish,
Beard.
and the teachers. Thank you.
Wayne Ingram, Dale Gill, and Charles Scott.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Ingram, and I am the president and CEO
of the National Tourism and Heritage Association. My address is 2332 La Rose. It is a pleasure to say to you that CTE is a vital tool for our children to be. It is a pleasure to say to you that CTE is a vital tool for our children to be trained and be prepared for their decided career paths. The Tuskegee Institute experience going forward is the mantra. Practical education works. I must say from my experience as a DECA student in 1968 at Hamilton High School put me on a path which gave me the opportunity to speak to you today as a professional in the hospitality and tourism industry since 1979. This industry is ready to receive students that CTE sends us. My working with students enrolled in the Shelby County School CTA FBLA section as a volunteer judge for over 20 years has shown me that our children deserve this training, and various industries will appreciate our concerted efforts. I plan to continue to serve, and just on last week, I had the opportunity to speak before FBLA students at Cordova High School, and I must say that our assisting students at Ridgeway, White Station, Central, and Craigmont is working.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Del Gill. I'm the Chairman Emeritus of the Whitehaven the Whitehaven Empowerment Zone Leadership Council.
Speak into the microphone just a little bit more. Thank you, Mr. Gill.
I am here to address a recommendation to consolidate Manor Lake Manor Lake Elementary and Gila Middle School. The Whitehaven Empowerment Zone Leadership Council supports the recommended 10 schools for the WIZ for the school year 2018-19. The WIZ will render educational services with an approach of academic alignment and learning with a purpose. Schools in the Whitehaven Empowerment Zone will benefit from an aggressive partnership between Shelby County Schools, the leadership and staff of Whitehaven High, and the school's network of community partners such as Peer Power and the University of Memphis. The unique driver of success in the Empowerment Zone is the total vertical alignment across all schools in terms of academics, particularly in the core subject areas of math, language arts, and science, as well as the best teaching practice. Vertical alignment means teachers can collaborate and interact with students across the empowerment zones, providing more access to diverse and competitive courses like world language, business, and technology that will prepare them for college and careers. Parents, educators, and community stakeholders will form a unified leadership council and a unified PTO to ensure that they have an active voice in decisions that impact students across the empowerment zone, which will result in good stewardship for our entire community. As with our innovation zone, the empowerment zone model is added evidence of our commitment to strengthening feeder patterns and enhancing communities as we strive toward the reality of Destination 2025. Each school in the empowerment zone may receive a different level of intervention, support depending upon the school's performance and the need of their students. This model will cultivate our children's endless possibilities of learning opportunities and increase community involvement. The WIZ Leadership Council agrees with the schools chosen to become members of the WIZ. The WIZ Leadership Council is respectfully urging this elected body to approve the school consolidation of Manor Lake Elementary and Gila Middle School to create a new Gila K through 8 at the present Gila Middle School location at 4649 on Lake. Thank you in advance.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
Charles Scott, 3689 Huckleberry Street, 38116. Have a package for each one of the board members as well as the superintendent as we get started. Again, Madam Chairman, to the board commissioner, Superintendent Hobson, just give you a brief recap since the last time our PTSA council has been to you in front of January. I want to give a special thanks to Chairman Avant, Board Member Stephanie Love, Jones, Bills for attending our council's Founder Day program. In your packet, you're going to see a lot of pictures in there. I also encourage you to go to our website. We have a lot more pictures of the various events as well. Also had the opportunity to attend Westwood High's program. They did a nice job there. You'll see some pictures there as well. It's been mentioned that they were one of 55 schools nationally that received a 1,000 grant from the National PTA. Also attended the Shelby County Commissioners meeting just on February the 19th. Again, it's important that we go to those meetings because they are the funding bodies. So I always encourage those parents and students here, now's the time to go to those meetings so we can support that when it comes time for the budget. Also, special thanks to the board members, Stephanie Love, Bibbs, Mr. Antonio Event, and all the school and PTA volunteers and chaperones who helped arrange, plan, or travel to Nashville on February 21st. On sporting that shirt, they took over 289 students from Shelby County schools, and they had the highest number. The next highest number was Chattanooga with 42. So we carried the place, and our students did a great job in advocating on our behalf. Again, a lot of more pictures on the website. I encourage you to go. And finally, I had the opportunity to attend the Memphis Educational Series, Leveling the Playing Field, Community Investment for All Youth Forum at the Civil Rights Museum, of which one of the panelists was Lois Phillips, the Director of Family and Community Engagement. I thank you for your time and appreciate your help and your cooperation.
I'm going to call the next three names: Andrea Brown, Lisa Jorgensen, and Mary Chandler. The last name is Molly Yin. Andrea Brown. Okay, Ms. Jorgensen.
Thank you. Lisa Jorgensen, board member of the United Education Association, the local affiliate of the Tennessee Education Association, and the National Education Association. Good evening. Thank you all for your dedication in support of public education and academic success for all students. I'd like to bring your attention to two surveys prepared by the United Education Association of Shelby County. The UEA has put together the two surveys to get better clarity from the district's K-5 ELA teachers tasked with implementing expeditionary learning. The UEA has asked them of the pros as well as the cons. The teachers were also invited to give personal, albeit anonymous, comments. The second survey, part 2, is asking K-12 teachers for recommendations for a successful next implementation. The UEA respectfully requests that agenda item 12.1 that's on today's business meeting agenda be tabled and sent back to committee. The surveys are scheduled to be held until March 9th, and we would like the vote for this particular item to be delayed until we are able to gather the data that both we and we believe the district would be interested and need to know. Thank you.
I just want to mention that our time clock keeps jumping, so our parliamentarian is keeping the official time. So if you hear a ding, it's because we are keeping the official time here. We are having a little technical problems. So we're now moving to Mary Chandler and then Molly Ann. It's okay. Oh, that's all right. Thank you, Mary, for coming out. It's a brave young woman to come up and speak in front of a microphone. No problem. So Molly Yan is our last speaker.
Good evening. My name is Molly Yuan of 1255 South Parkway East. In light of the recent Florida school shooting, I think we should all focus our attention on tightening campus security, at least on certain schools. I go to a school with an open campus, so we're completely exposed when we make our daily treks outside. I've also witnessed students who were easily able to sneak on and off campus. So what's stopping a criminal from doing the same? At this rate, nothing is stopping them. Many of our security guards are also extremely passive, sometimes even neglecting their duties, which is absolutely unacceptable. I urge the board to carefully look into and evaluate the current security set in place at some of our schools. We cannot afford to remain complacent. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Now we'll move to the chair's report. I do want to just thank you, Board Member Love and Mr. Avan and Community Engagement for really supporting. We do have one more public comment. Come on, Mary, you can do it. Let's give her a round of applause.
So, Mary we wanted to get home and do homework, and I think we just got out of order on when she was going to read. So I was going to, and her mom's part of our system, and I'm going to read it for her. And I don't blame her because what are you in, fourth grade, Mary?
Third grade.
Third grade? It's tough for a third grader to get up. My name is Mary, and I live at, I'm reading, what do you call it, third person? Well, yeah, yes.
You're reading it third person.
Yeah, 8474 Stonewood Cove, Cordova, Tennessee. And I'm here to tell you that I like the EL program. My teacher lets me read real books and talk to my friends about what we read. I also like the writing activities that challenge my thinking, the work up, but I love to learn. Please allow the purchase of the EL materials so that I can keep reading their wonderful books. Thank you.
Mary, thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. Billy, you did a great job. We appreciate, and we know this just speaks a little bit to the resolution that I'm bringing forth later about the importance of having mock trials. I think expanding what mock trials looks like in our schools, because I think it's really, really important for us to be able to hear the voices of our kids. And so many of our kids have come out. I appreciate Molly coming to give voice to her concerns, and we ought to continue to find ways to amplify the voices of our kids. So thank you to both Mary and Molly who had enough courage to come out and share their opinion with us tonight. Also want to thank Miss Jones. I was trying to get to that. Miss Jones, oh my God, every time I look at you, because Teresa used to sit over here, I have that visual, that spatial image. Miss Love, I'd like to thank Miss Love and Mr. Avan and Community Engagement for all of their work with Students Storm the Hill. We had almost 300 students who were able to go and give voice to some of the things that are concerning them within Shelby County Schools. So I really thank the gargantuan effort it took to support our students, and thank you to Ms. Love and Mr. Avan for all of your hard work in getting that organized. I am now going to turn over to the different committee reports. First, we'll have the Academic Performance Committee report. Ms. Bibbs.
All right, thank you, Chair. I, too, wanted to say kudos to Board Member Love and Mr. Avent because they let me tag along and be a chaperone. So all I had to do was show up and kind of usher kids along. But the event itself was great. Kids learned a lot. Kids saw a lot. I think it was really important for us to continue those efforts. So thank you guys for your great hard work. So coming out of Academic Performance Committee, we actually had a meeting earlier today. It will be a resolution that I'm bringing regarding Students at the Center Challenge. We had a conversation about our upcoming academic retreat that will be scheduled for the month of March, and as well as we talked a little bit more around EL, which is on the agenda today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bibbs. Moving on to Audit, Budget, and Finance Committee. Mr. Caldwell.
Yes, I actually had a comment on Ms. Bibbs' committee. I would hope that we can do something like storm the county commission meeting, because I think that that could be very effective. Just putting a bug in your ear. But on audit, budget, and finance, we've had several meetings. The first was the February 5th meeting that the administration met with us and we had a board retreat. On February 6th, we covered the comprehensive annual financial report for 2016-17, then the school internal school funds report for 2016-17, and then the second quarter financial statements. On the 16th and the 21st, we had meetings for the board to help understand the budget better and come up with a process where we can ask questions and better advocate for the money and the funds that we need, and looking at maybe one or two more of those meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Moving on to Capital Needs and Facilities Committee. I'll come back. Community outreach and community outreach engagement, Ms. Love.
Thank you. Tuesday, February 20th, we had a meeting with our student service department, and like I stated to the media, this was not a meeting because of what happened unfortunately in Florida. This was a meeting previously scheduled. So some of the things that we did speak about were our resource officers, their roles and responsibilities, the programs that we currently have now, how effective are they? Do we need more programs? And I did ask for information on all of our programs that are in our schools assisting our children so we can see if they are actually serving the needs of our children. We also spoke about a partnership with the DA's office to help address truancy in 16 of our schools. And we spoke, Dr. Richmond gave a presentation on some of our not our partners, but our different counselors, behavior specialists, professional school counselors, the mental health department, and also the roles and responsibilities of them and the behavior specialists, the student leadership program managers, and the roles of our ISS teachers. Because this is budget season, we did ask them to let us know what they need. I think one board member asked, in a perfect world, what is it that you would need? So I still haven't received anything, and I know this world isn't perfect. So because it is budget season, I do look forward to receiving something so we can make sure, just like that young spoke about, we can make sure our students feel safe in our schools. And that's it, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Love. A lot of hard work going on behalf of our students. We appreciate it. Evaluation Committee report.
Thank you, Chairman. My report will be brief, but we have identified our vendor to facilitate the evaluation, and we are in the process of setting them up as a vendor, and hopefully my next report will be the timeline, and the process will be moving forward.
Thank you. Internal board operations, Ms. Bibbs. I'm sorry, Mr. Cornell.
I want to ask Chair McCormick a question. I have put in a new or more extensive evaluation instrument suggestion now for 2 years. When will that be? When will we discuss the rewriting of the evaluation?
So part of the work, I sent an email to board members last week saying that there were 2 buckets of work that we needed to focus on. One was our academic retreat. The other is the evaluation tool. So as a purpose of utility, we have to go with the instrument that we voted on in years past in order to get the superintendent's evaluation done. He has agreed, and board members have agreed, that we need to create a new instrument that will be for the 18-19 school year. So as part of our work, in March we'll be focusing in on the academic retreat, and in April, May, we will set a time in order for us to work with an outside vendor to create a new evaluation tool. So at that time, we'll be able to incorporate some of the changes you and other board members want to make sure is clear in the evaluation.
I submitted it 2 years ago. Why is it delayed 3 years?
So we haven't been delayed 3 years. I think we've had, as a committee and as a board, we've had an opportunity to discuss those changes. If there were specific changes that board members wanted and needed to make for the particular instrument, then that would have been a conversation at that time. So we've moved past that time frame. As a purpose of state law, we need to move forward in the utility of getting the evaluation done for the 17-18 school year. We're happy to entertain any changes specific to an instrument that we want to create and develop. But the board, majority of the board, voted to utilize the instrument that we are using.
I submitted it to the staff to ask that it be put on the agenda. It was never put on the agenda.
So we'll make sure that if that is your distinction of what happened, we want to make sure for the next committee meeting that we will have an answer.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to Internal Board Operations Committee.
We do not have a report at this time. The scheduled meeting that we had was canceled due to the presentation, not just a conversation that needed to go a little bit further before being presented.
Okay, thank you. Legislative Advocacy, Mr. Cornell.
I got a question. Chair Bibbs, was it your committee or was it procurement? I'm a little confused that wanted to set a definite lead time for contracts and large expenditures so that we receive a list of them and that they are given to us in plenty of time to look at. Was that procurement or internal board operations?
So it actually was both. Earlier today I met with staff around bringing that back up, but we first have to get with procurement committee as well. So we actually were discussing both. So we're talking about it both. I think in the original meeting that you're referring to, we said it needed to be referred back to staff who handle procurement. And they came up with some small solution, but it technically crosses both committees.
Did you get your question answered? Okay. Moving on to Legislative Advocacy Committee report.
No report. Okay. So although we didn't have a meeting, I do want to let the listening public know that there is a bill, House Bill 1806. It is going to be heard tomorrow. And this bill pretty much states that the person sponsoring the bill is asking for a moratorium on all assessments until the year 2020 so that the state of Tennessee can get all the kinks worked out as it relates to our testing. The only person is not on there. Okay. So you can call Nashville. Do you want me to get the committee and then I can mention it?
All right, we're moving on to Procurement Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did have a meeting, and there were only 2 items on the agenda. I think they are on the agenda tonight for vote. I think they're on the consent agenda. So since our last meeting, though, I have established a time frame for each procurement meeting through, I think it's June. So each of you should have received invites, a series of invites, and we know what meetings are what the meeting dates are through June. And it is my desire for us to look at those dates, look at what we need to do in terms of procurement and contracts and those issues, and make sure that we are timely, because that's what the main focus is are we timely with getting these contracts and these procurement issues to the board. One thing we did discuss is our ongoing efforts to get our disparity study moving. We're still in the process of that. There was a time frame given, about 6 months. The board strongly expressed a desire to try to see if we could shorten that time frame by doing some, maybe going ahead and posting positions or whatever. So we expressed that as a desire to the administration. But basically, we have now an established time schedule each month for procurement matters. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Moving on to Superintendent Hobson's report. Okay.
Thank you, Board Member. Just very briefly, in response, I think to what one of the students said, some of our open campuses are certainly an ongoing concern when we think about school safety. So I think in that connection, we had an initial meeting with both mayors with the police director and some sheriffs. District Attorney Wyrick was there, and I think our U.S. Attorney was there, and so we are beginning to start the discussion. And from the discussion, a couple things that jumped out of my mind that I asked for support on was obviously immediate training as it relates to active shooter situations. We actually had some here in central office. I know Board Member Jones has gone through some, but we need to figure out a way to get schools trained at a faster pace, and they've supported or they've agreed to help us figure that out. And then we have several large buildings that have multiple buildings with multiple entrances that we need some help in terms of figuring out how to secure those buildings. So we've been, they made a commitment to help us that. So we'll be meeting ongoing, and I think our theme was that we need to have some action to do all we can to make sure that what happened in Florida, the risk of that is minimized. So just want to let you know that. I'll keep you abreast of that. And then secondly, just quickly, there were two items, really one in particular, that the state wanted a answer really from the board in terms of whether or not it would follow its recommendation regarding closing Hawkins Mill. I think they've given us a March 15 deadline. My recommendation last week was to continue with the critical focus path, but did want to hear from the board a firm response to that so I can know how to respond to the commissioner.
Mr. Caldwell.
So I would just ask if it's possible that somebody from the board attend some of those meetings so we can have a voice about what's done. And,
absolutely.
I would just recommend that my personal thing would be the community engagement person be involved in that.
Great. If that's the board's will, we just make sure.
I mean, I'm open to what everybody else wants. But.
Mr. Cornell.
Thank you. I thought the chair was going to respond. Madam Chair and Mr. Superintendent, I think since we have seen what happened in Florida, we've heard a lot of the reports, we've heard a lot of discussion, because state law allows us to discuss deep security in private. I think it would be good if we had a meeting in executive session and go over some things that we might all be concerned about that are dealing with the schools and with school security, and actually sit and discuss it and then get a report back about some things that are being done. I believe that there may be some budget items that need to be changed in order to make the schools more secure, and I think it'd be good if we had an executive session to look at that.
We certainly could set that up.
Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to open up a whole nother line of conversation on Eureka Map, but I just wanted to let the superintendent and the staff, especially Dr. Griffin, know some of the feedback I received from the community sessions. I urged her, based on parents saying, I need something to help me with this new map. And she put together a training session for parents, and I've had some come to me and tell me that it was difficult. It was hard. They stuck with it, and now, particularly, she was helping with her grandchild, that she loves it, and that she logs on herself. And the training that you gave, especially, she said she attended over at Ridgeway, was helpful. But it was an effort, but now she enjoys it. Yeah. So I just wanted you to know that.
Okay. So, Superintendent, you're asking now, is there a motion about the closing of Hawkins Mill as well as the American Way? Is there a motion?
I think that, Madam Chair, the American Way doesn't necessarily require an immediate response, but the date that the state gave us was March 15 on Hawkins Mill, and I'm prepared to tell the state that we'll decline that. But I think that's if the board wants to weigh in prior to my conversation.
Ms. Love.
So do I need to make a motion first and then we discuss, or how does it work?
Well, he's still giving us part of his report, so if you had a question or comment, I think it's fine.
Okay, so as the board member that represents Hawkins Mill, I am asking for the board to support the recommendation that the superintendent sends a letter to tell the Commissioner of Education that we respectfully decline her statement of closing Hawkins Mill down. Thank you.
Ms. Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support Board Member Love's position. I support the superintendent's recommendation. I understand the department has made certain demands or requests, but I think that we're in a better position to do what needs to be done for that school, and the alternatives that they are proposing, I don't have the confidence that it's the right way to go. So I support your recommendation, Mr. Superintendent.
Ms. Bibbs?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to stand with the superintendent and Board Member Love and Jones, and that I support your recommendation that we do have some things that we can do on our own for our children, and we will continue to do that. And that is a great community school.
Mr. Caldwell?
I agree with what my other colleagues have already said.
So, seeing no other lights, I'll just add, Superintendent, that I think it's incumbent upon us as a governing body, when the state comes in and wants to make demands on how local control looks in our communities, that we have a right to say what's right for our kids in our schools. And so I appreciate all of the advocacy that folks have put around this issue. I think that we have demonstrated that the treatments we put in place have worked better than any turnaround model that the state has currently the state currently has in place. So I too support I support Board Member Love and others who've said that we would like to make sure that we have treatments first before we even consider. So I am not in favor of closing Hawkins Mill. Ms. Love? And
just so other board members can know, there is a meeting at Hawkins Mill, March the 8th. I believe the time is 6 o'clock. And I would request that we allow the parents of the students who attend that school, make sure we hear their questions and concerns.
So is there a motion? Want to clarify the motion? We don't do one? Okay.
And I think finally, board members, I said, I also received a letter that I sent to the board around the state's proposal to combine, help me, Ms. Love, I think it's Corning and...
So they want to close Corning and combine it with Fraser Elementary, because Corning has an enrollment of, I think, about 140. They've already moved the children from Georgian Hills Elementary, so they are currently at Fraser Elementary now. And that was due to a roof situation, but it was fixed months ago, but they've decided to leave the children at Fraser Elementary.
So what they've essentially said is that they're going to move the kids into one building anyway. They just want to know if we consent to closing Corning as they move the kids to the other building. You know, doesn't cause any heartburn for me. What we're going to have to end up doing is tearing the building down, because the building's in bad shape. And I guess the issue is whether you want them to have two schools in one school or just combine the schools. It's a distinction without a difference in my mind.
Ms. Jones?
So, Mr. Superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a process for school closure.
We do.
Not just receiving a letter and a request from the state asking that it be closed, even if we were to consider it. And I'm not saying that I do consider it the possibility. It's not done on a letter by the state. It would be us as a board deciding and having public meeting to have public comment. So I don't know that the letter, unless it is the board's desire to go down that road, is something that we can act on. And it didn't appear that there was much desire for collaboration, basically telling us what they were going to do. So, I don't know.
Ms. Love?
Superintendent, because this school is in my district as well, I know that the Commissioner of Education, she has pretty much stated what she wants to do. My suggestion to you would be to request that the commissioner holds a community meeting with those parents and letting them know exactly what it is that she is anticipating, and letting the public know that that is her recommendation, because that school is a part of the ASD. Although we control the building, ASD is operating that school. So I think that, you know, it needs to be noted that although there's only 140 students in there, I think those parents still need the same respect as we would give them if we were in this process. So, and then after that, then we can make our recommendation if we're going to close it or not. But I think that conversation needs to be had with the parents of Fraser Elementary and Corning Elementary, because Fraser will be the receiving school, before we state or give our recommendation or opinion on anything.
Will do.
If there are no further comments, we're gonna move on. So we're moving on to new board business in general counsel's report. We have a new interim general counsel. So is there a report, Ms. Irvin?
No report.
Okay. We're moving on to new board business in the consent agenda. Are there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to pull item 1118.
Okay.
About the HVAC mechanical projects for multiple school locations.
Superintendent, are there any other items?
We want to pull 1124, the February 2018 budget amendment, and the 11.26, a resolution that amend the Shelby County Board of Education fiscal year 2017-18 capital budget. I think that Mr. Johnson needed to make some corrections with the board.
Okay. Mr. Caldwell, is there anything else? I'm sorry, that's your light on before. Okay. All right. We're moving on to. Okay. So I'm going to read the items into record. 11.2. Hutton Mifflin Harcourt renewal in the amount of $159,100. 11.3 Scholastic in the amount of $344,960. 11.4 Decision Analytics and Information Management in the amount of $1,953,333. 11.5 Network Cabling in the amount of $2.5 million. 11.6 Emergency and Security Services RFP in the amount of $207,000. 11.7 Dixon Hughes Goodman in the amount of $145,000. 11.8 Elevators and Lifts Inspection, Testing, and Maintenance Services Contract in the amount of $206,316. 11.9 Mount Pisgah Middle School Roof Replacement Project in the amount of $122,998.95. 11.10 Ridgeway High School Roof Replacement Project in the amount of $564,960. 11.11 Facility lease Perea Elementary School in the amount of $210,000. 11.12 Whitehaven High School AE renovation of auditorium in the amount of $176,000. 11.13 White Station High School renovation project architect services in the amount of $176,000. 11.4 Food storage equipment freezer cooler rental in the amount of $101,832. 11.15 cold storage facility rental amount of $324,000. 11.16 Egypt Elementary School window replacement in the amount of $901,808.70. 11.17 Treadwell Elementary School HVAC replacement in the amount of $1,673,995. 11.19 roof replacement, Riverview K8 in the amount of $548,910. 11.20 roof replacement in the amount for LaRose Elementary in the amount of $141,101. 11.21 the amount of $11,453,630 for new classroom additions for 3 elementary schools. 11.22 fuel in the amount of $1,779,904. 11.23 furniture in the amount of $361,032.50. 11.25 second quarter FY 2017-18 financial statements. 11.27 American Way Middle resolution. And that will be all of the items for the consent agenda. If you could call a roll call vote.
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orgel. Aye. Board Member Love. Aye. Board Member McCormick. Aye. Board Member Jones. Aye. Board Member Bibbs. Aye. Board Member Cornell. Aye. Board Chair Avant.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes.
Have a quorum. The agenda is approved. Consent agenda is approved. Moving on to a request for action items. 12.1 expeditionary learning curriculum materials. The amount of I'm going to ask what the amount is, Superintendent, for this particular item. Because is that right? 11 million.
It's 8.2, $8,286,990.
Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to you for this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did have a good discussion regarding this earlier today in the academic committee. I want to turn it back over to Ms. Giles and have her just do a really brief recap of the presentation, and then just hear feedback from the board. And as I said during the meeting, if I misspoke last time saying it had to be done now, because the purpose of that really was more around budgetary. We wanted us to get to schools by June 30th so that it wouldn't count against next year's budget. But I don't want that to be the deciding factor. So I don't want you, I think in the words of some board members, I don't want you to feel rushed or like it's pressure. We do feel, though, that this is the right approach. I think that what we learned in the committee meeting is that EL is the #1 ranked Tier 1 curriculum in the country. And I know that we have a lot of students who struggle to read on grade level, but what we also learned in the committee was that in addition to working with kids on foundational skills and trying to catch kids up, we also need to expose them to the material that they are expected to learn if we're ultimately going to get to where we want to be. I will say, too, that the price has come down significantly since our last meeting, thanks in part at least to the board's things the board raised and how the board pushed us, and then we went back to the company and we've had a lot of discussions. There's also, in full transparency, about a $700,000 PD item too. And so I think the grand total would be somewhere around $8.9 million for the full ask. So I want to just ask Ms. Giles to really focus on the why behind EL, and then the breakdown of the cost, and then we'll be glad to entertain any questions the board has now. And if the board feels like it needs more time, we're more than happy to schedule some follow-up meetings. Ms. Giles.
3 points.
Thank you, Superintendent Hobson and the board. First of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit more about the EL curriculum and why we believe it is the right decision for us. As Superintendent Hobson stated.
Speak a little.
Oh, sorry.
Closer to the mic. Thank
Thought
you.
I had my teacher voice on. Okay, all right. As Superintendent Hobson stated earlier, the reason we are asking and wanting to utilize EL is because it's not just a simple curriculum. EL is a way of life. EL is a social justice curriculum. I was very moved earlier when we had an opportunity for some of our students who shared some of their artwork around some social justice issues, And so again, we wanted to just make sure that we don't miss the point of that. We're not just talking about are we putting materials in front of students just so that they can pass the test, but we are providing curriculum materials that will be addressing the whole child. So we're looking at, it is a social justice curriculum. It is aligned to our state standards. I do want to make sure that we emphasize that it is aligned to our state standards. And we know with proper training and support that our students will be able to soar. And as I mentioned earlier in our academic committee meeting, I do want to remind us of our goals of Destination 2025, one of those being that 90% of our third graders will be reading on grade level. And so we believe very strongly that the EL curriculum will help us to meet that that goal of Destination 2025. And at this time, we can also, I was wondering, did we have our PowerPoint up? But at this time, we can entertain some questions that you may have in terms of the curriculum itself, in terms of the materials, also in terms of any of the numbers.
Technology is good until it isn't.
It is.
There's no presentation?
We do have a presentation. I was.
So if we're just moving through, okay. So board member, she's entertaining questions now. Mr. Cornell.
Did y'all look at other companies and other academic material other than expeditionary learning?
So did we look at other ELA curriculum materials? We have had an opportunity to, there are other ELA curriculum materials such as Wit and Wisdom, CKLA. So we have had an opportunity to look at those materials also.
Was there a group of teachers that y'all put together as a group that looked at all the different materials?
So in terms of the group that were looking at the materials, there were some teachers that were a part of the smaller group, but the majority of that work was done through the CNI, the Curriculum and Instruction Advisors.
Okay, when did you decide that you liked this particular company?
So in the spring of last year, in spring of 2017, is when we made our first purchase with the EL curriculum. And at that time, that's when we approved the first purchase of the first two modules for grades K through 5.
And how many teachers in that category have been using this material?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that
How many
question?
teachers, what percent of teachers in that category have been using this material this year? Are all of them?
All of our teachers. So we began implementation of the EL curriculum for grades 3 through 5. That began in November of 2017. And then the rest of our teachers, K2, began implementation in January of 2018. So all of our teachers are utilizing, all of our K5 teachers are utilizing the EL curriculum.
If it's ready, I'll hold off.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Giles, are there a couple of slides? Because I think most of this we probably did go through in our committee meeting. So if there's anything additional, I think for the listening public, it's just we wanted to emphasize what you as the district wanted to emphasize why we were moving in the direction of EL. So if we can just quickly go through what those slides are.
One of the questions, or one of the statements that I wanted to make sure again that we emphasize, and it's the fourth bullet there that talks about how EL fosters communication, collaboration, and social and emotional learning. So again, we are looking for a curriculum that not only is teaching our students to read, but also teaching the entire student, the whole student. EL is a curriculum of choice, and on this slide, we just wanted to highlight some of the resources that we looked at in order to determine the quality of the EL curriculum. And as you can see, EL is one of the top rated curriculums by Ed Reports. I also wanted to ensure that we spend a little bit of time again talking about the fact that the EL curriculum fosters equity. Oftentimes we think about students and we think about our high achieving students or our low achieving students, but one important piece about the EL curriculum is that it provides access to all students because it is a tier 1 curriculum. And there are protocols that are built into the curriculum that allow students to engage. So we're ensuring that all students are being able to access complex text. They are engaging in speaking and writing, and therefore not only are they learning the foundational skills that they need, but also they are learning communication skills, which are extremely important.
I think Mr. Orgel had a question. Well,
No.
there's no one else that has a light on but you, Mr. Orgel. Oh, Mr. Caldwell's helping you out. Mr. Caldwell, I'll come back to Mr.
So I was encouraged by what I saw in terms of what the program can accomplish, where I think most of the concerns that I have are about the implementation plan and actually engaging the teachers first and having them better understand why y'all are moving into this so they can embrace it. I find it hard to think that the implementation will happen unless teachers understand why we're doing this and how it benefits them. So my preference would be to allow y'all to come back with a timeline and cost it out and specific things that you're going to do, and then try to reach the teachers and come back to us and report back to us, and then I'm willing to go to a special call meeting, whatever, to get it done in time.
Mr. Orgel.
So I applaud the effort, and as I told you guys, I went to a class today. I had some teachers, a group of teachers in my district asked me to come talk to them, and I think their tenure with the district they were 20, 21, and 14 years. I can't remember the exact tenures with the district. And I sent them to some board members, the books. And so a couple things, about 3 things that concern me. And I actually read the statute 1FL F5. I had to write it down because I wouldn't have remembered that. And I asked the teachers how they were teaching this to the students, and it didn't seem to meet what the statute said. And I know we've got I said it last week, 21% reading is what we are in 3rd grade. So then I said, well, show me the books. And I appreciate staff show me the books. So I brought 2 of them for staff to look at. What concerned me further, and I am not a teacher. I think I stated last week, I've tried to help. I've tried to do each one, teach one. I wasn't very good at it. And I worked at South Park Elementary. I wasn't very good at it either, but I hope I helped the people that I tried to read with. But so we're talking about advancing, doing things, 21st century school district, our 2025 destination. And I think a little bit about what Mr. Caldwell said. I just want to do it right. I don't care. I don't even know the book company, but I happened to sample 3 books. 2 of them Miss Avance got, and one of them was from 1968. One of them was from 1992. So that was when they were done. And so you look at the pictures, they're not, you start talking about cultural competency, and I agree with all that. You want people, but you want it to match what the children see. So if we're going to have a big approach to STEM, the tool book shouldn't be looking at things that were done in the Stone Age. They should be something competent or something that kids can relate to. Like you would have a cell phone if you're showing a phone, you wouldn't show a push button phone or a dial phone grandparents had. So the other thing was, and it's tough because you got a lot of books, and you got 6 grades worth of books, and you got modules, 3, 4, 5 modules for them. So I picked out a book and I asked about it, that they were doing a project called The Most Magnificent Thing. And this is it's probably a good book. And it was certainly on my grade level. And so I thumbed through the book, and this is why I would like to spend more time on this issue. And I think Mr. Cornell asked, did we have a textbook committee and who was on it on this? So the program might be great. This particular book, 3 times, maybe 4 times, shows a dog going to the bathroom. And I just happened to be flipping through it, and I'm like, why is that in the book? I mean, what does that have to do with about the most magnificent thing? And I think the kids do a project on their most magnificent thing. So I don't know if it was a joke, like Disney movies sometimes do something kind of funny in there and do it, but I just think we should, and y'all can look through that. I just want to make sure we do it right. It's a lot of money. Big concern, and this is with any vendor. Give me your best and final price. $11 million plus. Mr. Hobson, how much was the PD that now has come down last week? 1.7 million?
1.3.
So last week we sat in the same room and the price was $12.5 million, I think. Well, it was 11.2 plus, no, it was 11.9 because there was $800,000 in shipping plus $1.3 million in professional development, so it was actually a $13 million purchase. Yeah, 13.2. But so now today it's 8.2 plus 7, which is 8.9. So something bothers me a little bit because there's 1.1 plus 3 million, $4.1 million that if we'd been asleep, which we weren't, thank God we weren't asleep, that we would have just tossed out the window into some company, I don't know where they are as pockets, for some techs that she's got in front of her that were done in some cases 40 years ago, 45 years ago. So I'm just would rather take time to do it right and to do it right for our students, because I think that we owe them that, we owe our teachers that, and you guys have done a great job bringing forth what you think, but that's why we have us, so we can make the decisions. And you have so much on your plate, you probably didn't go read through.
Mr. Orgel, you're out of town.
So anyway, I think this could be the
time.
best thing, but let's study it a little bit more and do what Mr. Cornell said and have some input from our teachers to make sure we get it right and get by it.
Ms. Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Presentation earlier, and I get it. And I think that this particular curriculum has considerable value. What I think above everything else is that we can't just have foundational. My main concern is that we're probably leaning heavily toward standards and not focusing where we should on the foundational. But as to this, I don't have a problem. I think that I hear a desire from board members to have more conversation, and I won't object to that. If I had to vote tonight, I'd probably approve it, because I do think we need to move toward a more rigorous curriculum. And I think that this, implemented properly, would do that. But I am certainly not opposed to, and I do think we need to take the time we need to do our due diligence on this. So I don't oppose us having more conversation, or at least another conversation. My only concern is what Board Member Bibbs talked about last week in terms of the time frame. When would we need to make a decision in order to give ourselves the time we need to do the professional development so that this can be rolled out with fidelity?
So I think to that point, Ms. Jones, that we probably have 2 or 3 weeks, and what we could also do if the board decides to do it, if the time does get tight, we could just get the first module to have the training. But I think more important than anything, I want the board to be comfortable with it's a big investment. But I also say to Ms. Jones, to just reiterate what we said, what we know now is that the material that is in kids' hands right now simply is not aligned to the standard. More importantly, we talked about equity in that meeting, and we want all of our kids to be exposed to rigorous material. And we know there are a lot of kids who are far behind, so for those kids, it's not gonna be either or, it's gotta be both and. Work on foundational skills, but then also expose you to the rigorous material people need to know. Because we can't say, that's what's happened for years. Little Johnny can't really read. I'm gonna work with him, I'm gonna love on him, but I'm not gonna get him to where he needs to be. So you gotta make sure in every class throughout the district, you are exposed to what you are expected to know in order in this world for us to be successful. So I'm not opposed to slowing down to make sure you guys have the time that you need, but want to be clear about, you know, in this time frame, like what we need to do to get you guys comfortable. I'm also, I think Mr. Carr had a good point, not opposed to having some meetings directly with teachers, but I'm also going to ask teachers to bring your best thinking, right? Don't just come here and tell me what we don't want to do, because if we all agree that the Journeys textbooks is not aligned to what kids need to know, then we can't just say it's all good, because everybody's told me, I've heard it from all of teachers say, well, you know, the thing that we have to own is we did not do a good job implementing this. We did not do a good job communicating to teachers the why, which is why I think I've heard several times teachers said, one teacher in particular, oh, I don't really like it. Now I know how to use it. I like it a lot better. But the problem is you gave us a filet mignon on a trash can lid. And I get that. So I think we've got to do some rework around the why. But I just implore the board and just say that whatever we do, we've got to make sure we put the materials in the kids' hands, that even if they can't master it now, that it still gives them the best chance to at least be exposed to what they are expected to know to graduate from our schools. I agree with Mr. Orgel. We've got a 21% literacy rate, and we've been doing this kind of basal textbooks, what we've been doing for 50 years, and it's not working. So we got to do the basic skills, but we also got to expose kids to what they're supposed to know too. Thank you.
Right. So, Mr. Superintendent, I agree with what you said. I receive a lot of complaints about a lot of things, but I don't receive a lot of solutions bringing me what we need to do, other than I want to keep what we had. But the reason most of these changes are implemented is because what we had is not working. Now, there may be reasons. Some of that fault may be ours. Some of it may be other things, but the school is not achieving, and that's why changes are made. But having said that, I said last week, we need a plan B. So I don't want us to go and put this off and have a couple more meetings thinking that, well, they're going to eventually approve this, because we may not. So part of that meeting and part of that conversation needs to be, if the board rejects this, what is our plan going forward? What's plan B? Exactly what do we plan to do? And I think that's important for board members who say they don't know and they're going back and forth. But we need to know what it would look like if we do nothing with this, and what we're going to do.
So what C&I would have to do, Ms. Jones, I guess, is just to, we talked about two different things, just having C&I look around kind of the country and try to gather different supports. And ironically, we first started using EL because as C&I was designing additional supplements, they felt that EL was some of the best things out there. So then they started using that, and then teachers had to copy the material, and you know how that happened. So that, or alternative B, is just to take an allotment of money, give it to schools, and then say, schools, you figure out what you want to do. But that's really inconsistent with the theory of action that the board has approved, and then we can't really support, 50 different people doing 50 different things.
And if I may, I would just like to add just two things. The timing piece I know is very critical, and we definitely want to make sure that we take our time and make the best decision. But we also just want to ask that we make sure we put ourselves in a position so that we can ensure that this implementation is done well and in a timely manner. And it will begin with professional development, but of course we will not move forward with those steps until we know that that is the direction that we're going to move in. And then secondly, I would just also like to make sure that everyone understands in terms of our alternatives. One of the alternatives that we just talked about being the C&I department basically writing a K-5 curriculum. And I just want to make sure that we go on record in saying that the CNI department does not have the internal capacity to rewrite a K-5 curriculum. So our alternative would be to continue using the Journeys curriculum materials as is.
Mr. Orgel.
So, Superintendent, I'm not so concerned about when, and I agree with Ms. Jones. We don't want to keep putting off. We need to have a solution. And you're right. It's easy to complain and hard to come up with an answer. But I would have liked to seen, and I don't want to be. A lot of times, we get overwhelmed with information, so we just make a decision. And there's a bunch of graphs and charts, and I mean, I'm turning to Kevin, or because he just happens to sit next to me and just say, "Do you understand this?" So, and using the acronyms and all this stuff where we don't understand it, and maybe purposefully so, and almost, Teresa, it's like you want to get the dumbest jury you can sometimes, because it'll be so complicated that they just, they don't understand it, so they vote on a complicated matter that probably required a little more understanding. But so
That's me speaking from a male perspective of
what's that?
the dumbest jury. I guess you're speaking from the male perspective of all the folks.
No, the dumbest jury, like at a trial.
Yeah.
She was a lawyer. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
So that juries are made up of male and females. They don't just pick one sex or the other.
I know.
And
move on, Billy. I would leave that one alone.
yeah.
Let's move on. I go win.
But anyway, and the superintendent knows that too. But what I'm saying is, why don't we take, like, this isn't the only program out there. I mean, and we should say, oh, it's voted #1 by Scholastic Magazine or something, or I don't know. I saw the stuff, but why don't we take and look at and take our time and look at the other programs and what other people doing, and then what I would have liked to seen is not that it aligns with the state standards, but here's the state standard, why this aligns with it. Here's Journeys that we may consider again, why this aligns with it. I mean, whatever other program, I get stuff emailed to me all the time on programs, but that's our academic department. But I think you got to have buy-in from your teachers. We've got 6,200 teaching professionals, and if we didn't really get their buy-in on it, the only people I'm hearing from are teachers that don't like it, and I'm hearing from a lot of them. And then the principals whisper about it because they got to toe the line, so they just do phone calls. But what I'm saying is, I think that we rushed it. We don't have these books in the kids' hands, particularly in K2. I think K2, 3, 5 we may. The classroom's got 6 of these, so the kids aren't taking books home. We know how, from Imagination Library and other programs, how important it is to have. Some of these kids go to live in homes with no printed material. Miss Love's spoken about that before. And so they don't have books. They don't take books home with them.
Your time.
So anyway, I think that I'm for the children. I'm for raising our literacy to 100%. And I think we need to find the best program. And if this is it, that's great. But I'd like to look at a couple.
I will say, Mr. Org, I just really appreciate the board for pushing, because you're right. I mean, I think that in addition to that shipment fee that you push, I had a conversation with the CEO, I guess a couple of days after that, and we really pushed. And I think here in the board meeting, I think sometimes you tell people, you got to give us your best price. Our board's not going for this, and they say, oh, maybe they will, and then they hear the meeting, and then it causes a reset on the renegotiation. So I do want the board to know that, I personally got involved in this, and we got to a much better place. But I also will say too, Mr. Rock, I think it was probably over a year ago or so, we had an academic committee meeting, and we laid out all the standards and laid this all out last year. So I don't want you guys to think we just dropped this on you now. We talked about the EL and the Eureka Math. We had these working sessions and laid out all the standards and laid out how the material fit the standards and did all that. So we did that last year, but happy to make sure we do that again. Because again, I mean, it is a big purchase, but I think that it's a good investment in our kids.
Mr. Cornell.
Yeah, I do want to thank everybody out there, the professionals who are trying to get us to some place that you think best. When it comes to a huge contract like that, I have a problem voting when I don't know all the things that I need to know to vote for it. And so there's more things I'd like to ask that I won't ask tonight that we can ask later. But I think the taxpayers want us to make sure that whatever contract, whatever company we use, that it's the proper thing. I also went to Homework Help and heard about expeditionary learning, and I thought there was some good things about it. I thought it opened the door to a greater creativity than the old Common Core had been. But still, if a lot of teachers are still unready and haven't been looking at it and giving us feedback on the details for them, the ones that have to be there and do it, then I'm unready. So I want to thank everybody for trying hard and whatnot. But one other thing, the mathematics teacher from, I think, Southwind did a great job explaining mathematics last night. And what she was saying was that sometimes when you multiply a fraction by a fraction, a third by a third, you have to go back to the whole and then start to do it. And she referred to her grandmother's cornbread that had to be divided up at dinner table. Did a great job. And so I guess what I'm saying now is, if I'm going to be looking at all these different fractions and pieces of what we're doing, I'd like to get the overview and the whole of where we've been and what the complete contract implementation means. And I learned that last night at Eureka Math.
So I have three more board members that'd like to make comments, but Ms. Giles, if you'd like to have a seat, we put Dr. Griffin through a egregious amount of time standing up in front of the board. So I think any other questions could be answered at your seat. So please feel free to take a seat. Mr. Caldwell.
So two things. I'm committed to not dragging this out longer than a week to 10 days, and glad to make. I'll make it to any meeting we have to have to get this approved. And then lastly, I don't know what kind of household Billy Orgel lives in, but it's different from mine, so I don't want to be painted with the brush that you just got everybody painted with your remarks. I got to go home. I've married 36 years. I want to make it to 37.
Does she?
Ms. Love. Mic drop.
Thank you, Chair. I would say that although I am alarmed with the books that I did see, I do have questions about it. I think that with this curriculum, it's more so around the principal buying into it, and it's more so around the implementation and making sure that the teachers in the schools know and understand exactly what they're charged with as it relates to presenting it to our children. I know that I have 2 schools in my district who were part of the pilot program who used this. And because they are strong-willed principals and they put it in a way that the teachers actually understood the curriculum, it was a success. I can't speak for all teachers, I can't speak for all schools, but I do know that we had 2 schools in my district that used it. Both of them were priority schools, one was in I-zone. So hopefully when we have our next meeting, Dr. Griffin, you could bring those 2 principals, either one or the other, well, both with the middle and elementary, and let them explain, how did they implement it? How did they get the teachers to buy into it? What did they do to show the teachers that, although this is what we have to teach them, we're going to do it in a way that our children grasp it. And I guess I would like to see that. Now, as far as these books, I am concerned, but I do know that the curriculum aspect of it, that those 2 principals were able to do something different. So what was it? And like Dr. Burt stated, It's not the curriculum, it's the people. It's not the programs, it's the people. So as a board member, I would like to hear from those people. What challenges did they have? What lessons did you guys take from that? So as it relates to the professional development, you can you can eliminate some of those issues. So if it's the will of the board, are we saying that we're going to move? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Woman Bibbs.
Ms. Bibbs?
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. I am trying to make a motion so that we go ahead and move this back to committee, so then that way we can have the questions that need to be answered and the presentations that we need to have in order to be able to move forward with it.
So the motion is to move this to committee for further discussion.
Yes.
And that's second by Board Member Jones. Okay, so we need to, our parliamentarian says we need to first put it before the board because this is all conversation around a presentation. So we need to put this item on the floor. So I need a motion to make, put item to adopt 12.1 so that we can then make a motion to move it to committee. Moved by Mr. Caldwell.
Second.
Second by Ms. Jones.
And
now we're going to take an amendment from Ms. Bibbs to move to refer to committee.
Yes, now I move to move it back to committee so we can have an additional presentation.
Okay, and I have a second by Ms. Jones, Ms. Love, Mr. Oracle. Can I have a roll call vote?
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orville. Board Member Love. Board Member McCormick.
Aye.
Board Member Jones. Board Member Bibbs. Board Member Cornell.
Aye.
Board Chair Avant.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes.
We have a quorum, where it's now referred to committee. And so now we have 12.2, which is the board member strategic funds allocation program. There have been a few allocations that have been added to the agenda, so I want to make sure that I am reading those. Yep, got it. So that I read into the record. The amount for the board allocation is $85,534. I need to refresh. I'm refreshing. Thank you. So under Board Member Jones, we have an amount for Craigmont High School of $100,000 for a planetarium. Board Member Caldwell, Westside Elementary, building upgrades, $8,000. Snowden K-8, secured entry, $5,000. Iowa Elementary campus beautification, $7,000. Bellevue Middle School, $10,000. Roselle Elementary, $8,000. Over Magnolia Elementary, $1,000. La Rose Elementary, $8,000. Campus School, $4,534. Booker T. Washington, $7,000. Peabody Elementary, $7,000. Downtown Elementary, $6,000. Bruce Elementary, $5,000. Central High School, $1,000 for a total of $77,534. Board Member Bibbs, Goodlet Elementary, in the amount of $6,000. A. Macia Walker, $6,500. Garden View Elementary, $5,000. Robert R. Church, $2,500. Cromwell Elementary, $5,800. Oak Haven High School, $7,000. Hamilton Elementary, $2,010. Knight Road, $10,000. Oak Haven, $10,000. Hickory Ridge Elementary, $6,000. Crump Elementary, $5,600. Oakshire, $5,000. Hamilton High, $12,500. Hamilton Middle, $2,300. American Way Middle, $5,000. Getwell Elementary, $8,000. Sheffield High School, $10,000. Whitehaven High School, $2,500. And Alsea Elementary School, $2,705, in the amount of $113,785. And then Board Chair Avent, A.B. Hill, 8,000. Bellevue Elementary, Bellevue Middle School, 8,000. Roselle Elementary, 5,000. The amount of, that's not right. 21,000 $1,000, not 2,100. So let's make sure that's updated on the record. This is Mr. Can we get a motion to adopt the strategic allocations, and then we can have discussion if any?
Motion to approve. And so can I ask a question of the parliamentarian? So the amount for Magnolia was wrong. It's 7,000. Do I need to correct that after we speak, or does it?
So why don't we make sure that that's corrected into the record tonight? It's 7,000 for Magnolia, and so we will make sure that is updated on our board documents. Okay. So I'm making a correction.
Yes, and with that correction, I make a motion to approve the strategic board member allocations.
Okay, with that correction for Magnolia Elementary. Yes. Second, can I get a roll call vote?
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orgel. Aye. Board Member Love. Aye. Board Member McCormick.
Aye.
Board Member Jones. Aye. Board Member Bibbs. Aye. Board Member Cornell.
Aye.
Board Chair Avent.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes.
You have a quorum. That motion passes. We are moving on. 3, this has already been read into the record, so I need a motion to approve the resolution recognizing Westwood High School PTSA for outstanding community involvement.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Caldwell. Second by Ms. Bibbs. Roll call vote. It's already been read into the record earlier.
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orgel. Aye. Board Member Love. Aye. Board Member McCormick.
Aye.
Board Member Jones. Aye. Board Member Bibbs. Aye. Board Member Cornell.
Aye.
Board Chair Avent.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes.
That motion passes. 12.4, the Jeter Middle School conversion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that there was a letter, I think, that's been uploaded from the Whitehaven Empowerment Zone in support of it. But again, this is just for us to start the process. I believe we actually, Ms. Powers, correct me if I'm wrong, we have some meetings scheduled with the, okay.
So I think the meeting for Jeter is next week, actually. So we have several meetings just for the listening public. There are several community meetings that are happening this week and next week, specifically related to the Whitehaven Empowerment Zone. And those dates and meetings are on the website. Mr. Cornell?
This isn't my area, and I'm not complaining about the meetings or anything. It's just that we have no document. There's no document on the screen, I don't think. Is there?
For the
conversion?
There's a topic, but I don't see any supporting documents. What are we actually voting?
We did a presentation last week. We just didn't upload it again. It's to allow us to start the process, the community meetings, to combine Manor Lake and Jeter.
Okay, well, do we make, if there's no document, do we make a parliamentary inquiry, do we make a motion to support those meetings? Or are we voting on a document that's not here?
So
Yeah.
the motion is to start the process for
Okay.
the community meetings. It isn't to make a decision about converting the schools until the community meetings start.
Okay, so is that a motion and then there's a second to do that?
Mm-hmm.
You-
It is.
It's your district?
It is my district.
So you so move?
I do so move.
Okay, I second.
Mr. Orgel?
So, I don't remember the last time it's been a couple years, but, so what'll happen now is Jeter will be, if we approve it, which the board has to approve it, Jeter would be accepting the Manor Lake kids.
Yes, it would become a
what
K-8.
So what we'll do is we'll have a meeting at Jeter, a public meeting, then we'll have a public meeting at Manor Lake to let them know what we're proposing. And is there one other meeting after that, or is it just those 2 meetings?
Ms. Powers, how are the meetings? We may have just done one meeting because they're so close, but
Right now, all we have scheduled is one meeting for both families. So both families for Manor Lake and Jeter will come to one meeting at at the Whitehaven Auditorium, and then from there, based on the feedback and the input that the families provide, we can determine whether we need additional meetings at each of the schools. But that's all we have scheduled right now.
Lord knows I don't want any additional meetings, but just policy-wise, and and maybe even with the state, Jennifer might be able to, but is that, I always remember when we did this, we had meeting this one, and he just brought a point. I just want to make sure that we don't get into some kind of scenario.
So we actually, Mr. Organ, have multiple meetings. I think we're doing a kind of at Whitehaven, then we'll do one in Manor Lake and at Jeter too.
Is that the way you're supposed to do it? I know it's
least
probably
two.
better for the parents to do it one meeting, but because different communities may have different concerns.
There's at least, I think policy dictates that are at least 2 meetings.
Yeah.
So we started a round of meetings because there's a lot going on with the Whitehaven Empowerment Zone. So actually we have a meeting tomorrow, we have one Thursday, we have one next Tuesday and next Wednesday. All related to all of the schools that are in the Whitehaven Empowerment
But
Zone.
not Manor Lake and Jeter, because that's
Yeah,
not.
Manor Lake and Jeter are in that
In that.
succession of meetings.
Okay.
But so we will have to have an additional meeting.
So
for
one at Manor Lake and one at Jeter. Right.
Yes.
I just want to I just didn't want us to run afoul of it and then somebody say,
Yes.
we didn't do it right.
Mr. Caldwell?
So I don't remember the meeting, but I'm fine with moving ahead. But I think also, don't we normally get an impact study? And so we'll see what the combined school is, what the costs are and everything.
Yeah.
So as long as we're getting that, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we typically have done, Mr. Caldwell, is bring that when we make an actual vote. Yeah.
Well, and I think as part of the presentation that should be shared at the schools for Mr. Caldwell. So to your point, we'll also need to make sure to share that data at the schools in the presentations. Ms. Love?
This is just a suggestion. Manor Lake and Jeter. Connecting with the principals to see what type of parent PTA meetings they already have, and maybe you can have somebody from the district go over there, so that so we haven't planned the Manor Lake and Jeter meeting, have we?
Yes, so the Manor Lake date is...
It's already been planned for next month?
No, next week.
Next week. Okay. Well, in the future, if we want to cut down on meetings and we want to make the best use of our time, all schools have parent meetings. They have some type of parent event. Let's connect with the principals to see what days they already have meetings, so we could have maybe representatives from the school, representatives from the district to go to that school when there's a meeting already planned, because like Board Member Jones stated, sometimes we have all of these meetings and we may only have 3 or 4 people in attendance. So just whoever's planning these meetings, a suggestion, start connecting with the principals to see what they already have scheduled, because I think they know what meetings they can have, that'll bring out the most parents so that we can make better use of our time.
And Ms. Love, just, because I've been highly involved with the Whitehaven Empowerment Zone, this has been an ongoing process, and they have been reaching out to some of those parents. And
not just talking about the Whitehaven Empowerment Zone. I'm saying moving forward as
you
a
were speaking,
district. Yes,
speaking
ma'am.
specifically about Manor Lake and Jeter, so I was
I know,
adding some
but I said
commentary.
moving forward. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
As a practice. Clear. So can we get a roll call vote?
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orgel. Board Member Love. Board Member McCormick. Board Member Jones. Board Member Bibbs. Board Member Cornell.
Aye.
Board Chair Avent.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes.
That motion passes. We have now added 12.5. So Superintendent, 12.5 is a joint agreement of Nashville.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is Mr. Williams didn't get this on the agenda on time last week, but it's essentially to pay for our internet, and it's 100% E-ratable. It's a renewal, but we wanted to bring it back to the board.
Mr. Caldwell.
Motion approved.
Second, Ms. Love. Mr. Orgel?
Is, at one point, there was mention, this is E-rate. So the phone bills, we pay something on our phone bills, and then this goes into a federal fund that's rebated to the states, and
This is, so all of the wide area network is 100% re-rated, so we pay it and the feds just reimburse it for that. Now, I think the phone bills are no longer, are they still, like, there's been some changes with what E-rate will cover.
Yeah, they've been reducing the amount they pay on the phones for the last 5 years. So we're approaching year zero on that. This upcoming year will be the last year they'll pay anything on the voice. So we're already working on other ways to do our telephone service. But, and if I could correct you, Superintendent, it's like 90%, it's not 100% on the reimbursement. So we'll get about 5.8 million, between 5.8 and 6 million reimbursed on this.
so it's kind of
contract.
revenue, it's expense neutral.
Pretty much, yes.
That's good. Are there grants? Because you said you were looking.
Now, what we're looking for is alternatives to how we deliver telephone service so that we don't have a large phone bill to pay out of pocket. So this being the last year, we've been investigating other options for voice services in the district.
And I won't take a lot of your time on this. I was going to I dealt with a company down in New Orleans, and but it had nothing to do with stuff. But they actually worked the school market, and so they had a contract with like the Jefferson Parish, and they extended fiber optic. They actually went in the streets and put the lines in, and we've got 200 locations, and then they sold the excess to people along the way, internet service, cable, whatever. And I didn't know if you'd ever had anybody come to you for that and say, hey, let me work with you, get the right of way, run it to your school. I don't know what the cost is per school. Is this a 3 year? This is 3 years, right?
Yes.
So it's $2 million a year, roughly 2.1, something like that. And I just didn't know if somebody had ever come to you and proposed it.
No, they didn't, but we have been actively exploring other ways to do it. So we have been approached about doing our own fiber, like you said, that we could actually take advantage of some dark fiber in the city. So there are a number of options out there. We are still evaluating.
Does ENA they carry on somebody else's fiber, and then they
Yes.
put some kind of they put the head-end equipment in so they're carrying on Zayo or somebody, or
Zayo and AT&T.
So they're
and some
reselling.
Comcast as
So
well.
they're reselling.
Yes.
So you could have different carriers. So you could be using Comcast in North Memphis.
Yes.
And Zayo in the center of the city or something. Okay. Well, good. But it's getting paid for, which is great.
Yes.
Good. Thanks.
Mr. Caldwell?
At the risk of getting board member Orgel started again, I think the MLG&W laid optic cable, and then they didn't do anything with it, so some company owns that. Okay.
To his credit, he was ahead of his time, and he was right on that.
You just read it into the record. Can I get a roll call vote?
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orgel.
Aye.
Board Member Love. Board Member McCormick. Board Member Jones. Board Member Bibbs. Board Member Cornell. Board Chair Avant.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes.
That motion carries. 12.6, resolution supporting the enhancement of mock trial programs in Shelby County Schools. This is a resolution that I want to bring forward to the board. I have been overwhelmed and just by what has happened in the last few weeks, and I have been just so impressed with how students have come out to speak on behalf of what has happened, in Florida. And so I think those skills that those students have expressed are things that we should continue to support within our own students. Critical thinking and amplifying their voice, and utilizing their voice to advocate for things that are really, really important to them. So I'd like, in support of what has happened recently, to read this resolution into the record and ask for approval from board members. Whereas students across the United States have varied experience with tragedy and opinions regarding current events, and whereas students enrolled in Shelby County schools required a structured forum which allows students to passionately yet effectively engage others and voice their opinions, and whereas students' participation of Day on the Hill displayed an example of high level of passion and social awareness among students enrolled in the Shelby County schools, and whereas mock trial is an academic activity for students who are interested in advocacy, debate, and other forensics, which provide a structured forum for students to engage others in their opinions, and whereas mock trial facilitates excellence in public speaking and critical thinking, and whereas mock trials, I'm going to be able to do it too. Mock trial programs complement and expand classroom instruction in core areas such as language arts, reading, history, science, writing, and mathematics. And whereas mock trial programs prepare students for all post-secondary careers, for example, careers in law, education, politics, diplomacy, medicine, engineering, as well as print and visual media. And whereas mock trial programs develop students' personal confidence, passion, and skill in oral and written advocacy, and teaches them to use and amplify their voice in any circumstances. Now it therefore be resolved that Shelby County's Board of Education acknowledges the need for a program where students may engage thoughts and ideas of other students as well as community and its leaders through oral and written advocacy, and supports the return of mock trial programs in an expanded form to Shelby County schools. Be it further resolved that Shelby County Board of Education supports the inclusion of other student programs such as debate teams and Model UN Nations, which provide similar forums for students and instructional support for teachers and administrators. Sponsored by Shantae Avant, Board Chair, District 6. And I'd like to move its adoption and then take home. Ms.
So
Love.
moved.
And second, Ms. Love. Ms. Jones?
So, Chair, I do support the concept. Just a couple of things and a request. I know that we have some very active debate teams throughout the district, and I don't know how this would interplay with that. And also, just recently, I was contacted by some lawyers who wanted to do mock trial, supplied them with all of the principals' names and numbers, and they're going to try to organize it on their own. So this is in line with trying to facilitate that. But I think in order for us to understand where we actually are going with this and the ask of the staff, we probably need to bring this, whatever the recommendation is, back to the through policy, even if it's not a policy, but to present us what is this going to look like for staff once they decide how it's going to be implemented. Because I want to know, I don't want to put an undue burden, and it's a board initiative, so it may or may not be an actual policy, but I think it should come back through policy for us to review what they plan on pushing out.
Okay. Ms. Love?
Chair, I also support this resolution, and I am glad that you brought this resolution before us. Going back to what Board Member Jones stated, I was going to mention that, making sure that we find out what, extra duties we're asking of our educators. But also, superintendent, so whoever's going to lead this work for this academic activity, I would ask that you make sure that they include some of our children who may not necessarily be involved already in advocacy or debate. On the way back from the trip from Nashville, on the bus, we were watching the conversation with, I guess, the President of the United States and the students from Florida. And one of the students stated, he said, I've had over 20 of my homies killed over the last 4 or 5 years. And he said, nobody has ever asked me how I felt. He said, nobody has asked me was I okay, and he's one of our students, a high schooler. So when we talk about public speaking, and when we talk about engaging our students in advocacy work, these are children that see firsthand violence and death. They see it every single day. So I just want to make sure that we engage those children, and they may not speak as well as some other children, but they're able to express themselves. And I think if we actually took the time to really listen to them, that we could learn a lot from them.
Roll call vote.
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orgel. Board Member Love. Board Member McCormick. Board Member Jones. Board Member Bibbs. Board Member Cornell.
Aye.
Board Chair Avant. You have 6 ayes.
That motion passes. 12.7, resolution supporting participation in Students at the Center Challenge. Ms. Bibbs.
Thank you, Chair. I'm bringing forth a resolution about Shelby County Schools participating in Students at the Center. And it's a challenge, actually, that is wrapped around the conversation about community schools. The superintendent mentioned, of course, to us on several occasions, within the past year to year and a half or so around the importance of him moving forward with the community school concept. Our new director of parent and community engagement came from Bell Forest, which is one of our successful community schools. So this challenge is us participating in a joint initiative with a coalition of community schools, communities in schools, and Strive Together. In committee, you did ask me around what foundations will be a part of this challenge. Zuckerberg Foundation, Ford Foundation, and Coalition for Community Schools, just for the record. And the resolution states, whereas the Shelby County Schools Board is committed to supporting the district's Destination 2025 plan, 80% of our seniors will be college and career ready, 90% of our students will graduate on time, and 100% of our college and career ready graduates will enroll in a post-secondary opportunity. And whereas 2 of our 5 priorities in meeting our Destination 2025 goals include expanding high-quality school options and mobilizing family and community partners. And whereas the Shelby County Schools Board supports community schools as a model to meet our stated priorities. And whereas through a joint initiative of the Coalition for Community Schools, Communities in Schools, and Strive Together, the Students at the Center Challenge provides an opportunity for the district to create, working with local partners, aligned student-centered systems across sectors to achieve better, more equitable outcomes for students by identifying a shared vision for student-centered learning and building a blueprint for realizing that vision. And whereas the aligned network partners like Shelby County Schools Board believes in focusing on students, families, and neighborhoods to ensure every student will have high-quality opportunities and supports they need to learn and thrive, from a robust, engaging curriculum to health and wellness services, from strong family support to high-quality mentoring and enrichment opportunities, from work-based learning experiences to college readiness activities, and from decent housing and safe communities to transportation and employment. And whereas the Students at the Center Challenge provides an opportunity to receive fiscal, technological, and area expertise resources for planning and implementing the Shelby County Schools Community Schools model. Be it therefore resolved that Shelby County Schools Board will participate in the Students at the Center Challenge with local partners, communities in school, seeding success, and whole child strategies. And be it therefore resolved that I, Board Member Ms. Clay Bibbs, as the Chair of Board Academic Performance Committee, will serve as the Board Liaison for Students at the Center Challenge. And be it therefore resolved that the Superintendent, Dorsey Hobson, shall identify and appoint an Administrative Liaison for Students at the Center Challenge no later than March 6th. I'm sure you already have someone in mind, so that won't be difficult. And that is submitted on this day.
As I find myself saying more and more, Dr. Ray.
Okay. All right, and I respectfully submit that into record and ask for your support.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orville. Board Member Love. Board Member McCormick. Board Member Jones. Board Member Bibbs. Board Member Cornell. Board Chair Avant.
Aye.
You have 7 ayes.
That motion passes. You have a quorum. That motion passes. All right. Moving on to 12.8. Projects from multiple locations. Mr. Caldwell, I think, asked him to move this item off consent.
So I'll start by apologizing that I was not able to send an email with my concerns or questions until late in the day, and I want to tell you that I respect y'all's time, and I also appreciate the superintendent right away saying that he would be cooperative with it. I have several questions. I was looking at Germantown Municipal Schools, and they have recently been installing HVACs, and so I wondered how we could compare if our HVACs or what we're doing is a reasonable price. And I looked at the information, and I really couldn't tell what kind of units we're using, and they had them itemized. The other thing that I had questions about was, and it's not the first time, but the owner's contingency 10%, and that's $2.8 million, and that, I don't know what kind of process we have in place to make sure that, that's not just giving them an extra 10%, and then we have an allowance. It's $3.298 million, and both of those can make up about 15% of the overall cost of the project. There was a reference in the RFP about some other document, and I went to the Dropbox and couldn't find it, but I don't see any correlation with some of these numbers, and I'm sure some of it has to do with my lack of understanding about HVACs and what it takes to put in classrooms, but certainly don't feel like I can vote on this or vote for this without a better understanding of what each person bid on and what the price was of what their bids included.
Let's move. Can I get a motion, and then we can have some discussion. Ms. Jones, second. Ms. Jones.
This is, correct me, this is part of the 16 projects or the 13 that we bundled and then
Yeah, this is,
for lack of a better word, the blind bid and the blind acceptance, but then we would go back and cost it out.
so this is a line item award. And so we had 26 projects, and we had received responses from 9 vendors, and they could bid on any one of the 26 projects, one or several, depending on what they wanted to bid on. And then the awards were made project by project, based on lowest bid.
So, I think I'm going to support this, and I think we went through this. We had some legal issues that we went back and we addressed those, or at least as best we could. And but my main concern is the timing of this. And one of the reasons it was explained to me why we took the approach that we did was to make sure that we were able to get these projects on schedule to spend the money in this budget year. Is that right?
And more importantly, to get the work done before the school year starts.
Okay. And so if we table this now, and Mr. Caldwell, are you suggesting that we go back out to bid, or what are you suggesting?
First, I'd just like some information about what was included in each person's bid, what items there were. I did reach out to the chair of the county commission and mentioned that fact that I think it was July 1st we had to have this stuff appropriated, and she was amenable to, if need be, to push that deadline back based on if we're trying to make sure we're getting the right price for things.
Well, does she have a consensus of 7 votes to do that? I would hate for us to have come this far And but I would hope that the information you requested would be supplied. But I'm not in support of delaying these number of projects for these schools that desperately need this work. But I would hope that what the information that you've requested would be supplied immediately. And if there's something else, but at this point, I have to support it.
I'd be happy to try to answer Mr. Caldwell's questions that he sent in his email, if that's appropriate.
You're saying what? I'm sorry.
Well, Ms. Avant, you were.
So she was giving a response to the questions I think that you had sent.
Okay. Did you have answers to all?
Yeah.
Of them? Okay.
So what we try to do our best. Thank you for appreciating the time that we were able to prepare. But what we did was we took the document that you gave us, which was a bid from a particular product vendor, and then we went back to our specs. And what we tried to do was, I think you're trying to get at, how do we know that we're getting a good price? And as we were trying to compare the scope and the spec of the equipment, and you really can't. So when we put out our bid for this equipment, it's based on design that we outsourced. And how that is written into our bids, it's based on requirements. Like, for example, it has to have a certain refrigerant type or operate from 0 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit without installation or control. So when we write the bid, we don't write it in terms of what products. We write it in terms of the requirement system that is designed by our outsourced design engineers. And then when the vendors provide their bids, they provide whatever product that they think can meet the requirements of our design spec, and then we look at that, evaluate it, we go to the lowest bid, and then we send the lowest bid back to our design engineers, and they rationalize if that bid made the specs and met the specs and the requirements. So we tried our best to rationalize the prices, but because this is products and what we bid out is requirements, you can't do it.
I just meant that as an example, because that may not be the apples to apples comparison, but when we were in another meeting, and so my impression that two of the most important things are the specs that are required.
Yes.
Because if you put enough specs in there, you can pretty much guarantee what kind of product is going to be used. And then the other thing is the people that make up the selection committee. So that's where I was trying to go, to see if these were, that we didn't limit the number of people that could bid on the HVAC. So I get that. That's okay. I'm not going to vote for this. So that's fine. But then also, is there a process in place for the owner's contingency 10%? So that's like giving them 10% on top, and then
Just use your microphone so we can hear.
I'm sorry, and then explain the allowance that doesn't seem to have any correlation to the size of the product and or what we were spending anywhere. And then I realize you probably don't have I'm assuming it's something around the HVACs because you don't have any allowance for the insulate pipes in the classrooms. So I imagine it's some technology or something.
Yeah. So the difference between the allowance and a contingency, I'm sorry, the process? Just the process you want to know about? That is correct. I was going to describe them, but yes, they are different. What's your question? Okay. So, yes. So for the contingency and the allowances, the vendors have to submit a form when they want to use an allowance or a contingency. That form is tracked job by job because these buildings have their own purchase orders. So when we do a shore up or true up of what we're going to pay that vendor, we go back to their request for allowances. Our engineers prove it out, and then it goes into the payment cycle. So we check that every month for every job, for every allowance from every vendor. Can I explain the definition of both? Maybe that might help. Okay. So the allowance is an amount that if you're bidding something, you know, it's stated in the specs, and it's an allowance for if something comes up within that area because it's not defined yet, meaning you might have a typical problem with this unit that typically goes wrong. So there's an allowance there, and if that problem actually does occur, that vendor has to then submit a form to say this is the challenge that occurred. You know, we want to use the allowance. Here's the reason why, and then our engineers prove that out. Our design engineers prove that out, and then we either agree with the allowance or not. The contingency is a little bit different, where it is an amount for an unforeseen item. So you had no idea that something was going to come up, and that contingency is to cover things that you just had no ability to anticipate. And that's the difference between those items. But regardless, you know, the vendors have to formally request that usage and allocation, and then we rationalize that request with our engineers, and then we go forward and put it into the payment cycle on a monthly basis.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Orgel?
So I appreciate it, and I appreciate a different approach on this. And what I liked about what you did was that you opened it up so that we didn't pick Carrier, Train, Goodman.
Right.
We didn't specify equipment, because we've had that problem in the past. Leonard knows, he's been here a few years, is that we write some spec that nobody else can meet it, that it has to be 32.38 inches tall, but everybody else is 34 inches. So, you don't meet the spec, so you didn't do that, which I appreciate. And so we'll end up with different equipment. I think I asked you that question before at different places, but every school's different. So I just renovated a 125-year-old building. So I had I didn't have enough contingency, and I had plenty of change orders. And for someone saying, well, you know, we weren't putting this pipe here, or you didn't tell us you needed a hose bib here, or there's no electrical outlet here and you need electricity for this, or you got the wrong. So I mean, you're doing. If it was a new build, and I want to distinguish, like we were building a new school. What did we build in your district, West Haven? Oh,
The Pride, West Haven, yes.
are you feeling better? Okay. So anyway, so we built West Haven. Leonard may know the answer to this. Was that under budget, or was that over budget?
It was on budget.
So it was on budget.
Yes.
So the contingency was 5% on that, because it was new construction, I believe. Did that go back into the pool, or did we spend it?
It goes back to the board.
So that you got to distinguish, if we're building a new building. If we built a new building and we had an architect draw these plans up and do all the subsurface work, the engineering, everything, and then they come back and they say, oh, well, we need to do a change order because you didn't tell it. Nah, you bid it. That's what we do, hard bids, I think. And there could be some unforeseen. That's why I have a little bit of a contingency. But I think in an older project like White Station, just because it happens to be in my district, you know, built in the 1950s with an antiquated HVAC system. I mean, my mom taught there in 1959, I think. So probably using, if they had air then, they probably didn't. But it's an old system, so you got things you've got to account for. So I get why you're doing that, and I hope that what Chris is saying is that you guys are vigilant when they try to pull one over and say, because contractors may have a tendency to do that, I don't know, and say, hey, I need some extra money, this is what it is, that you're out there and inspecting it and doing it. But I like the way you took a different approach. I like it, and I'm supportive of what you're doing. And for me, I feel comfortable with your process. I hope some money will be coming back to us, because those are good questions he asked.
Absolutely.
Because we did a good job designing it. And I also hope that we can get these things done for our teachers that report in July in very uncomfortable situations, and our students in August. You got a big task.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Orgel. Seeing no other lights, roll call vote.
Board Member Caldwell.
No.
Board Member Orgel.
Aye.
Board Member Woods.
Aye.
Board Member Love.
I like saying that.
Board Member Jones. Board Member Bibbs. Board Member Cornell. Board Chair Avant.
Aye.
You have 7 ayes.
That motion passes. You have a quorum.
That was 8, right?
She said no, she negative vote too.
I thought you said 7.
It's 7. You have 1 no
that's
and
what missing.
1
I just wanted to debate with
Oh,
you.
okay.
This for the EO, right? I'm just joking. I'm joking, guys. Just having fun. Sorry.
So, thank you. That motion passes. I appreciate it. And I do just want to note that this was another opportunity for us to have great participation from folks who have not been able to be a part of this process before. And having $18 million of minority contracts is no small feat. So good job to Ms. Phelan and her team. Moving on to 12.9. Mr. Johnson.
So 12.9, this is the resolution. This resolution was pulled in all transparency. We were planning to reallocate funds from potential savings from our charter school, given that the enrollment would be much lower. We have, I think in February during our budget retreat, I mentioned that I would have a better idea of our enrollment numbers, and our enrollment numbers are on par with what we budgeted for charter schools. So it's about 15,000 students. We're still able to pay for the textbooks, but it will not be due to those savings. And I just wanted to update the board and correct that.
Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Mr. Caldwell, Ms. Jones, second. Seeing no lights, roll call vote.
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orgel. Board Member Woods. Board Member Love. Board Member Jones.
Aye.
Board Member Bibbs. Board Member Cornell. Board Chair Avant.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes.
We have a quorum. That motion passes. 12.10. Quickly.
Yes,
Quickly.
very quick. So there were 2 minor adjustments. One is great news. We've been working with the county. They are going to allow us to spend the remaining amount of our appropriation for Germantown High School Classroom Edition. So we've added that back to the budget, and that was about $778,000. And then the second part is that we have moved the Bear Building on reallocation as part of the appropriation of the second appropriation of $26 million. And this was really just a adjustment that we and the county agreed upon. So just those 2 minor adjustments.
Can I get a motion? Mr. Caldwell.
Second.
Second, Mr. Woods. Seeing no lights, roll call vote.
Board Member Caldwell.
Aye.
Board Member Orgel. Board Member Woods. Board Member Love. Board Member Jones. Board Member Bibbs. Board Member Cornell.
Since Kevin hit the ground running, aye.
Board Chair Avant.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes.
That's a motion passes. Meeting is adjourned.